"20 minutes. That's all it took. Somebody with trained eyes sat down with the facts of your life. Not the feelings, not your side of it. Just the facts laid out in order. The way you'd lay out evidence on a table, the dates, the patterns, the people who were always somehow nearby when things fell apart." Who people? You're willing to die for a pile of cockroaches. Why? Because Dad was right. And after 20 minutes, this person looked up and said something you've been afraid to say out loud for years, because every time you got close to it, somebody told you that you were being paranoid. They said this wasn't bad luck, this was coordinated, and I need you to hear why that might be the most freeing sentence anyone's ever said about your life. I don't apologize. In the end, I don't care whether you love me or you hate me, just as long as I win. Let me back up because you spent a long time being told a specific story about yourself. The story goes like this. You're unlucky. You're the person things just happen to. You attract chaos. You make bad choices. You pick the wrong people. You end up in the wrong situations. And if a pattern keeps repeating in your life, then the only common denominator is you. So it must be you. You've heard that last one 1,000 times, haven't you? The common denominator is you. People love that line. They say it like it's wisdom. And every time they said it, a little more of you believed that you were just fundamentally built for failure. But here's what a trained eye sees that an untrained one doesn't. A detective doesn't look at how things feel. A detective looks at sequence, at timing, at who benefited. They look at your life the way they'd look at a crime scene, which means they don't start from the assumption that you're the problem. They start from the assumption that effects have causes, and that when the same kind of thing keeps happening to the same person, the question isn't what's wrong with the person. Why do you read so much? My brother has a sword, and I have my mind. Mine needs books, like a sword needs a wet stone. The question is, what's the mechanism? What keeps producing this result? And when somebody actually does that with your life, when they stop asking why do you keep letting this happen and start asking what was actually happening here, the picture changes completely because look at the timing. Every time you got close to something good, something pulled you back. And it wasn't always random. Sometimes it was a person who got quietly threatened by your progress and moved subtly to slow you down. Sometimes it was a situation that someone else had more control over than they let on. Sometimes it was information that was kept from you at exactly the moment you needed it. You experienced all of that as bad luck, as your own failure, as the universe having it out for you. But luck doesn't have timing like that. Luck is random. What happened to you had rhythm. Now, I want to be careful here because I'm not going to feed you a story where everyone in your life was a secret agent. If someone prayed for family, do you think God zaps them with warm, fuzzy feelings? Or does it give them opportunities to love in a conspiracy against you? That's not what coordinated means. And I'm not going to insult your intelligence by pretending the whole world revolved around plotting your downfall. Most of the people who slowed you down weren't masterminds. They weren't even fully aware of what they were doing. But here's the thing about coordination. It doesn't require a meeting. It doesn't require a plan written down somewhere. People who benefit from you staying small will, without ever coordinating out loud, all move in the same direction. The one who needed you dependent, the one who needed you doubting yourself, the one who needed to be the more successful one, the one who needed you to stay the family problem so they didn't have to look at themselves. None of them sat in a room and planned it, but they were all pulling the same way. And when enough people pull the same way for long enough, the effect on you is identical to a coordinated effort. That's what the detective saw, not a conspiracy. A convergence. And that distinction changes everything about how you carry it. Think about what you actually felt in that moment when somebody said it out loud. There was probably a half second where you wanted to argue, where the old reflex kicked in and you almost said, no, it was my fault. I made those choices. I should have known better. That reflex is worth paying attention to, because notice how fast you reach to take the blame. Notice how much more comfortable guilt feels to you than the alternative. That's not an accident either. You were trained into that. Somewhere along the line, taking the blame became the safest available move, because the people around you got angry when you didn't. So you learned to confess to things that were never yours, just to keep the peace. And you got so good at it that you started doing it even when no one was in the room. Because if it was just you, if you really were the common denominator, the broken one, the cursed one, then there's nothing to be done. Family cares about you, not what you can do for them. Family's there, the good, bad. You just are what you are, and your life will keep producing the same wreckage forever. That's a hopeless story. That's the story they wanted you to believe, whether they knew it or not. Because a person who believes they're the problem stops looking for the actual mechanism. They turn all that investigative energy inward and use it to convict themselves. But if it was a convergence of forces, if it was a set of pressures all pushing in the same direction, then that's something you can actually understand. And anything you can understand, you can eventually move out from under. You can name the people who were pulling. You can see the patterns in the timing. You can stop blaming a defect in your character for something that was in large part a feature of your environment. Let me say that part again because it's the whole video. It was not a defect in your character, it was a feature of your environment. You were operating inside a system that was tilted against you. And then you were told the reason you kept sliding was that something was wrong with you. That's like blaming someone for losing their footing on a floor that was deliberately greased and then telling them they have a balance problem. What you done before you die? Paint a self-portrait. Build a house. I don't. The balance was never the issue. The floor was the issue. And the cruelest part is that the people who greased it were often the same ones standing there shaking their heads about how clumsy you are. So, what do you do with this? Because the easy thing would be to walk out of here furious, ready to go confront every person who ever pulled against you, ready to make them admit what they did. Don't. And here's why. Most of them will never admit it, because most of them never consciously knew it. You'd be demanding a confession for a crime the person doesn't remember committing because, for them, it wasn't a crime. It was just self-interest. They never examined. You'll exhaust yourself trying to extract an apology that isn't available. The detective didn't hand you this so you could go prosecute. The detective handed you this so you could finally stop prosecuting yourself. That's the first thing. You dropped the case against yourself. The investigation that's been running in the back of your mind for years. The one where you're the suspect. The one where every bad thing is more evidence that you're fundamentally flawed. You close it. Not guilty. Why does this sound like a goodbye? Because it is. The evidence doesn't support the charge. It never did. And the second thing, now that you can see the mechanism, you get to do something you could never do when you thought it was all your fault. You get to step out of the field. When you understand that certain people pull you in a certain direction, you don't have to confront them. You just have to stop standing where the pull is strongest. You reposition quietly. You spend less time in the rooms where the floor is greased. You stop handing information to people who've shown you what they do with it. You stop expecting fairness from a system you now understand isn't built to give it. None of that requires a single confrontation. It just requires that you finally believe the detective instead of the people who needed you to think you were the problem. Here's what's going to happen as you do.